Hello and welcome to the Blockleaders podcast with me, Gillian Gottsell. Today, I'm delighted to have as my guest Amar Bedi, who is the CEO of Tashi Gaming. So, Amar, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Gillian.
So we spoke the last time, it was all about the technology, but now I want to find a bit more about how you think and how your path into Web3 and Tashi and gaming and everything that's involved here. So tell me a bit about your background. Where were you educated?
So I grew up in Delhi. So my background in education is in finance. So I'm an accountant by profession. So I worked with one of the big four, got my training over there, and then I moved into investment banking and the usual finance kind of stuff. And about 15 years ago, then somehow that led into being involved in doing investments in the technology space, and then I haven't looked back into the traditional finance world since then.
So as it was interesting you were saying like you were in the investment banking side, which I'm not saying was boring, but it wasn't as exciting as technology. So what excites you about technology? What really interests you?
I think technology touches and has changed so many lives in ways that people don't appreciate. When we think back about when I started my career, like mobile phones were new, right? But they were mobile phones. But now when you look at a handset, it's your life, right? So people are addicted to these things. And now it's ubiquitous, right? So people don't think about life before this. So right now, when we think about new technology, people aren't thinking 10 years ahead because the human mind is so there's still the primitive brain that exists, right? So which kind of is focused on the here and now. There's very few folks that are thinking 10 years forward. And I think that's where I really like the concept of working in this space, which is so innovative, because the folks who are genuinely creating new things here are thinking 10, 20, 30, 50 years ahead. Versus when you look at the finance guys, they're focused on quarterly earnings, right? Going on the NASDAQ and people buying shares and how does that impact? And like even the businesses that are not listed, they're thinking 1 year ahead, right? This is a whole different way of thinking. And I think if once you understand the concept of innovation, it's very hard to kind of not be attracted to it.
That is interesting. So it's not looking 1 year out. It could be 10, 15, 20 years out. So in technology, it changes so quickly and so fast. How is that possible?
I think that's a misnomer of sorts, right? I think what happens is there's always a tipping point to adoption of technology, right? If you think of what's the biggest race right now in the world, it's AI. And people think about like, oh my God, AI has taken over. But AI has been worked on for the last 50 years, right? So OpenAI existed, I don't know, about more than 6 years, 7 years before ChatGPT in its current form was launched and it took over the world. And AI and its research existed, decades for a while. So the adoption happens, which gets the average person to understand this technology exists because it benefits them, right? Blockchain today is ubiquitous in some circles, but it's not adopted by masses. In 10 years' time, we might be using stable currencies as a way of, paying folks, and people will forget the time of like, oh my God, that those wild west days existed, right? So when you think about technology, there's a lot of research, a lot of innovation, a lot of effort that goes behind in getting it to a point where it can be adopted by the masses. That stuff is not known to folks. When we look at research happening in, say, the biogenome space, et cetera, there's so many things going on, but what the public gets and sees is only a sliver of that.
Oh, so your way of thinking is it's only when it becomes useful does it become visible.
So I would add one more term. I agree it's useful, but it's also there's an ease of use, right? Because there could be a technology which is super useful, but if it's very hard, the masses won't adopt it, right? Because people only care about what's easy in their lives. They don't want to go learn new things. They care about how do you help me right now? How do you entertain me right now? How do you make my life easier in some way right now? And it's all about in the now with ease.
That's interesting. So with regard, you mentioned blockchain, then blockchain obviously comes and stable coins with currency. When you first heard about this technology, or when did you first hear about this technology, and what thoughts did you have on it?
So I heard about Bitcoin, I guess, back 10 plus years ago, right? When it was this new thing that had popped up, and I had a few friends who'd invested, and they would be someone bought it for $100, and it went up like crazy, and it crashed like crazy, and I tracked it and bought a little bit back in 2016, but I was never actively invested in this space. I got invested in this space in 2020 when I think the NFT craze picked up, right? And I saw that I read a few books that made me understand the technology, right? And I think I'm a finance guy, so I always tracked it or tracked Bitcoin from a price perspective, that oh, this is an asset class, etc. But after I started my entrepreneurship journey of sorts, I started understanding the technology behind it, right? What are ledgers? What are distributed ledgers? What's the difference between having centralized ledgers and decentralized ledgers? And that's kind of what got me to appreciate the value of what has been created here. And I think we're still in our very early days with this, primarily because going back to what we were discussing, most of blockchain technology, even in today's day and age, has tons of friction. It's not easy to buy currencies, which is what you call on-ramp. It's not easy to convert it back into fiat, which is off-ramp. It's not easy to, there's a lot of issues in the user interface most dApps have. So that I think is still in its infancy, and I feel like it'll take about 5 years to reach that maturity. But more and more people are understanding the value of this technology. You see so many corporates now thinking about using distributed systems, not necessarily, and delineating, I would say, cryptocurrency and blockchain, right? Because I think people think of all of these terms in one word, right? Web3, blockchain, crypto. But the more you can delineate and have clearer use cases and make sure there's a value prop for every use case, I think that is what's going to lead to mass adoption really fast.
And how do you feel, is it different being an entrepreneur in this Web3? You said, I know it's a kind of an umbrella term. Is it different than being an entrepreneur in Web2?
Oh, absolutely. Like this is a like Web2 is a very, I guess, stable world, even in a startup environment. So, when I speak to Web2 entrepreneurs, they're like, oh wow, like this world is crazy. There's so many things you have to do and you have to learn a million things. And then you transition into Web3 and that gets flipped around even faster because it's one is that every Web3 business is also a media business, right? And in a way, I understand and appreciate that as a startup founder because what you're doing in Web3 is you're building with your community. In Web2, what a lot of folks end up doing is they build things and then they'll have, say, customers and so on, right? And it's hard to build them. And that's where a lot of founders fail as well. When Web3 founders truly understand and appreciate this ethos, but it takes a lot of effort, mind you, when I'm going to add that, they can start building things and get feedback on a real-time basis. And I think that's one of the key foundations of success for any startup. I think this is something that Web2 guys should adopt as well. It's just that it's an added work, and I think they already have so much on their plate, so they find it hard. In Web3, they can't do without it. So you realize that there's such a value add when you're constantly speaking with your community, because at the end of the day, you're serving someone, right? And the more you understand who you're serving and what they need, and they keep giving you real-time feedback, the faster you can solve that problem and make the business a success.
Interesting. So tell me, I think you're a gamer, is that right?
Oh yeah, I used to be a much bigger gamer. When I was growing up, I used to play everything from World of Warcraft to I remember it was called Red Alert, Command and Conquer, Doom, like all those games. Like I was a massive FIFA player. I spent countless hours on every potential FIFA game. I think play a lot less. I have a young daughter at home, so yeah.
Grown up, it's harder to find the time. So tell me, so gaming, you were a gamer in Web2, and then we're going to talk about Tashi and gaming in Web3. What were the biggest problems in Web2 that maybe they didn't know about? And then how are they fixed in Web3?
So I won't necessarily say Web2 gaming has problems, right? Like I think everything in life can be improved, but that's like those are business decisions, right? Like you have high costs, can you optimize them? How do you have new economic models? So I won't say like Web2 gaming in itself has issues in sense of how Web3 gaming has issues right now. I think in Web2 gaming, the ethos has always been, I went for, and I think a case in point is we've gone for Gamescom last year and we did a massive demo there. And, there were these 10 massive halls in the middle of Germany in Cologne, and all these gamers were present there. And I think this industry thrives because game developers are gamers themselves and they create experiences that gamers like, right? And of course, everything can be slightly better, but that's different than the, Web3, and I'll just come to that. In Web3, I think what happened was that people built blockchains and they realized gaming can be use case. And then the blockchain developers built games. And those weren't necessarily game developers. And I think that's what's changing now, right? Because the blockchain developers, the games that they built had a lot of friction points, right? They were thinking about how do I put blockchain in the games? And there's benefits to having blockchain in the games, but not at the cost of the gaming experience. Like I play a game because I enjoy the game, I enjoy the experience. There's some, I either win or I get some rewards or whatever it is. There's a certain value that I get as a gamer. Versus, I guess, Web3 developers were thinking about all the Web3 benefits, which is primarily like you get points and you get rewards, which is a small part of the game. Not every game is played because you earn points and you earn money out of it. So I think that discrepancy is now being kind of brought together because Web3 has started to bring in like actual game developers and designers and add the Web3 blockchain elements on top of that. And I think as that happens, we will see this discussion around Web2 and Web3 starting to separate and disappear, because then it's a game which has an additional feature set, and that's about it.
Okay, that's really cool. Yes, because as with most things, the technology shouldn't be the thing. I mean, we're talking on Zoom here, but I don't care what Zoom is. It's just a video platform. So
Exactly.
yeah, so the technology should not be the thing. Having said that, you're the CEO of Tashi Gaming. What does an organization like Tashi, a platform like Tashi, bring to improve the Web3 gaming experience?
So there's one of our motto, right? And then that's our core, what we call a Hippocratic oath, which our CTO came up was add no friction, right? And we kind of really follow that as we think about product development. We think about the integrations that we're doing. We're thinking about player experiences and onboarding new customers and everything, right? Like that's the thought process we have. And I think that starts with from our technology, trying to make that as seamless in a game. So from a gamer's perspective, the technology that we are building, they wouldn't even know it's a Web3 technology, right? So just to give a quick context, most multiplayer games have a client-server model, means there's a bunch of gamers, they connect directly via the cloud. We're trying to disrupt the cloud and make it decentralized. But as a gamer, I don't really care about AWS. I care about, does this game work really well? And that's kind of the motto we have with our product, is the gamers can still play the same game. They should be able to play Minecraft, Roblox, whatever that game is, without feeling or knowing that Tashi even exists.
And what things do you add? So Web3, I know in Web3 gaming began originally, ownership was a big thing. So do gamers want ownership, or is it more of a nice to have now that the technology is not going to add friction?
So I think firstly, it depends on the game type, right? So not every game you have assets and then you care about them, right? If you're playing a game like chess, like I love playing chess, for example. If I make a fancy chess board, like that's not why I play chess. I play chess for the sake of playing chess. So there isn't really any asset I can think about that I would specifically enjoy winning, right? And there's Web3 chess games where they're trying to do this, but that's not the ethos of the game, right? Like that's not why I will choose a platform. Having said that, there's multiple games out there, right? Like say World of Warcraft, etc., where people spend a lot of time building up their armory of things or assets that they buy. So there is a real value in the use case of having your assets as NFTs, right? The second biggest thing, which I think right now in this current evolution of Web3 people are trying to solve for, is attribution of player data as well, right? So if I play a lot of games, I'm giving gaming companies data, which they then sell to ad companies, right? ideally, it's my data, which I should be able to monetize. I could get small money out of it, could be in cents or dollars, but at the end of the day, it's something that as a player, I have a potential opportunity to earn. That's something that's in our longer term roadmap. We want to help game studios be able to offer their players to be able to attribute their data and monetize it. And then there's a whole bunch of other use cases that we are looking at as well, right? And the core goal there being that players at the end of the day care about how do they, at the core level is if they enjoy the game. And then the second part is that, yes, if they've spent time in buying assets, building their leaderboard, which is, their own data, how do they make sure that they can own and retain that or even monetize that? And I think blockchain offers all of those things. They aren't, I would say, necessary to have features, but they are definitely good to have features. Like in the startup world, we talk about the whole vitamins and painkillers kind of analogy. So these are definitely vitamins, but they are strong vitamins.
Okay. And then in terms of like with the Tashi gaming engine, how do you approach things like cheating in the game? And is it very prevalent, or is it over-egged, do you think?
Oh, cheating is definitely prevalent. So I would say in hyper casual gaming, you don't have much cheating because people are just playing for fun.
Yeah.
But the moment you get into competitive gaming, the moment you get into real money gaming, right? There's a whole bunch of folks who are obviously trying to do whatever they can to get that slight competitive edge. So for us, it's obviously a big theme. If you know about this game called GTA, which is a massive game, they did an online version which had a peer-to-peer model. And there was a whole bunch of cheating that happened in there that caused people to kind of not play it, right? Now, what we have done is taken that peer-to-peer kind of architecture and added a consensus layer on top. And how that works is that you need 2/3 of players to agree on the game state to continue forward. And what that does is it negates a certain type of cheats. So an example of one of those is what you call state edit cheats. So if I'm a hacker, I know how to give myself a few bonus assets or increase my health, the system will be able to recognize that, whoa, Amar's doing something funky there. All the other players, didn't see this happen. So how did his health go up? So they'll be able to recognize that, and the game studio in its code would be able to put in the fact, let's not give Amar that health. So those are some things that we built into our backend itself. So these are tools that game developers get. And I think the whole idea is that gaming should be fair and accessible to everyone. So that's definitely a massive value prop that we try and solve for.
Another issue in gaming, of course, is cost and server cost. How does Tashi address that?
So majority of server costs today happen because when you're working with centralized servers like AWS, Azure, you're sending them a lot of data, which is what you call ingress. And then the servers do a bunch of compute and then they send the data back out. So majority of your cost happens on that compute and egress. We take majority of that cost out of the equation because there is no cloud involved. So there is still some parts of our stack that we use to store data, etc., and keep things on centralized servers. So that's why we don't go to zero. But we're bringing down your cloud costs by 50 to 60%, which is massive for a lot of games that spend millions of dollars on cloud infrastructure.
Have you partnered with any people in your journey, either tech or in gaming?
Oh, of course, we have, I would say, dozens of partners. So on the infrastructure side, we have large partners like Aether, Orflare. We're part of NVIDIA's Inception program. We have a lot of gaming customers and partners. Indonesia's largest e-streaming platform, which has 5 million users, is our customer. And there's a bunch of 10 plus Web3 games that are already using Tashi.
Brilliant. So where are you, sorry, in your journey now? Where are you? Beta, live? Whereabouts are you?
So live beta right now. So we have what we call the Tashi Elite program. We've launched that very recently. And what that allows game developers in the space to do is they can sign up. And once they're part of it, we give them a white glove treatment to use the Tashi tech and explain them, because what we built is kind of very technical. So it takes time people to fully understand and use the technology. And we have a lot of resources that we want to help these guys, right? Because game developers are focused on building games. So we want to be the guys who can help them support them in their backend journey. And we have a few partners who are also part of this ecosystem with us, and we try and connect them with them so that they can get more ecosystem benefits like potential fund conversations, introductions to VCs, introductions to different Web3 protocols. So we do all that because I think for a game studio, we want them to focus on building the game, and we can help them with doing a lot of the other stuff.
Wow. And so future casting, when will you go live? And what are your plans? Let's ask the question: 1 year, 5 year, 10 years. Let's ask the tech question.
Absolutely. So I think I'll start with the more immediate one. We will be doing a node sale, which will kick off soon. We'll be announcing the dates in the next few weeks. The nodes will be something that, because we are deep in architecture, allow players and other folks in the ecosystem to run resource nodes. That will then lead on to us launching a Tashi token, which will happen within later this year. Our longer term plan is to make this technology so easy to use that you can click one button and use this as a backend, and then have a larger ecosystem that funds the overall Web3 gaming space. So in 5 years, I expect us to be the leading Web3 backend infrastructure platform, and being ubiquitous. When everyone says Web3 gaming, they think of Tashi.
Excellent. Or in fact, they might not even think of Tashi because you're just ubiquitous and there. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Amar. That's super. I look forward to following your progress. Tashi.gg is the website.
Absolutely.
And you've got Discord and links to Discord and Telegram and everything on your website.
Yes, we're active on Discord, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We've actually started hosting our Twitter spaces twice a week. So I host mine every Thursday, 5 p.m. Singapore time, and our CTO Ken hosts his at noon Pacific time. So feel free to join in, and we talk a lot about Web3 gaming and what Tashi is up to.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And I encourage people watching this to join the spaces going forward. Thank you very much for your time today, Amar.
Thanks a lot, Gillian, for having me.